Hey there, future teachers! Welcome to this explainer. If you're gearing up for the Texas 905 exam and getting ready to step into your very own classroom, you are in the exact right place. Today, we're focusing on a concept that's not just going to help you ace your certification, but it will honestly transform the way you teach. We're talking about Competency 001K, visual art across the curriculum. You know, as an educator, you have this incredible responsibility to make learning literally come alive, and understanding how to use visual arts is absolutely one of the most powerful tools you'll have in your instructional toolkit. So let's get right into what you need to know.
Part 1. A meaningful classroom moment.
To really wrap our heads around why this competency matters out there in the real world, we need to step inside a classroom. So picture this. You're standing in front of your lively fourth grade class. It's science time, and you're kicking off a unit on plant structures. You've got your lesson plan dialed in. Roots, stems, leaves, flowers, the whole shebang. You've written some key vocabulary words on the board, and maybe you've got a textbook passage ready to read together. But as you look around the room, you can see that a few of your students are already starting to zone out. And honestly, it makes sense. The concept of vascular tissue or photosynthesis can feel incredibly abstract to a 9-year-old. You want them to do so much more than just memorize some definitions for a Friday quiz, right? You want them to truly understand and appreciate the complexity of the natural world.
So, as their teacher, you are faced with a pretty vital instructional decision. How do you make this lesson stick? How do you get your students to deeply observe those intricate structures of a plant, to really engage with the material, and most importantly, to remember it long after the unit is over? Well, the answer lies in the exact competency we're exploring today. You don't just tell them to look at the plant, you invite them to draw it.
Okay, let's dive into this with Part 2, Cross-Curricular Integration Explained.
To solve our fourth grade science dilemma, we've got to look at what the certification exam actually expects from you. Descriptor K states that a beginning teacher integrates instruction in the visual arts with instruction in other subject areas. What this really means for you, in practice, is recognizing that art isn't just an isolated subject tucked away in a 45-minute block on a Friday afternoon. Instead, visual art is this incredibly active, dynamic tool that you can use to deepen your students' understanding in language arts, math, science, social studies, you name it. Think about the contrast between teaching art completely on its own versus integrating it across your curriculum. When we teach art as an isolated subject, students might just be drawing for the sake of drawing, and hey, that's wonderful on its own. But when we talk about art integrated across the curriculum, we are talking about creating a really meaningful connection between the visual arts and another academic subject. And here is a totally critical point for your exam and your future practice. When you integrate, you absolutely must maintain the integrity of both disciplines. You're teaching legitimate science concepts while simultaneously teaching legitimate artistic techniques. It's a true partnership.
Let's break down some of this academic language you're going to need to know. First up, cross-curricular integration. This is simply the practice of connecting learning across multiple academic subjects. You might also hear it called interdisciplinary instruction, which just means teaching that combines concepts and skills from 2 or more content areas. But for this to actually work, there has to be a content connection. That means a meaningful, logical relationship between what's being taught in both subjects. You're not just handing students a coloring sheet of a historical figure to keep them quiet for 20 minutes. You are deliberately using visual representation to communicate complex information. Which brings us perfectly to authentic learning. By integrating art into other subjects, you're creating learning experiences that connect to real-world situations. I mean, think about it. Real-world botanists absolutely draw diagrams. Real-world architects use geometry and design every single day. Real-world historians analyze illustrations to understand the past. By modeling this right there in your classroom, you're promoting the transfer of learning. You're helping your students take knowledge and skills they learned in one specific situation and apply them to a completely new one.
When students create, analyze, and respond to art, they really aren't just making something pretty for the fridge. Just look at the powerhouse skills they're actively applying: observation, critical thinking, communication, problem solving, creativity. I mean, when a student is trying to sketch the exact jagged shape of a leaf's edge, their observation skills are in absolute overdrive. When they're trying to figure out how to represent a 3D object on a flat piece of paper, they are actively problem solving. These are foundational cognitive skills that strengthen learning across literally every single academic discipline you'll ever teach.
And this brilliantly illustrates Part 3, Visual Arts in Action.
To see what this actually looks like when you're the one leading the classroom, let's bounce back to that fourth grade science lesson from earlier. Instead of just having them read about plant structures, you bring in real plants or maybe some really high-quality photos. You guide your students in creating detailed botanical drawings, and suddenly, everything changes. They're applying intense scientific observation to get the specific veins of the leaf just right, while simultaneously using artistic techniques like shading, line weight, and proportion to communicate exactly what they've learned. You could even do this by having them build 3D models or sketch out scientific diagrams. The point is, they are stepping into the shoes of both scientists and artists at the exact same time.
Now consider how this works in a totally different subject, like mathematics. We all know math can feel incredibly abstract to some kids. But imagine integrating math and art by having your students create intricate geometric designs. Suddenly, they're exploring symmetry, angles, tessellations, and fractions through hands-on visual creation. They aren't just grinding through calculations on a worksheet, they are visually proving mathematical concepts through their own artwork.
Let's pause for a second. Think about this as a future teacher. How might the diverse learners in your classroom respond to drawing geometry rather than just calculating it? It's a game changer, right? So many students who might struggle with traditional numerical equations absolutely thrive when they can manipulate shapes, use spatial reasoning, and actually see the math visually. Integrating art provides these multiple, varied pathways for your students to access complex content. It makes your instruction so much more inclusive.
And this integration flows beautifully right into social studies, too. You can have students create historical illustrations to demonstrate their understanding of a specific era, a major event, or a different culture. Think about the depth required there. When a student has to draw a historical scene, they have to research the clothing, the architecture, the entire environment of that time period. The art demands historical accuracy, and that forges a deep, meaningful content connection that a standard multiple-choice test simply cannot match.
Finally, let's talk about language arts. Just think about the power of designing storybook illustrations. Reading and writing are inherently about storytelling, right? Well, so is art. Students can illustrate key scenes from a novel to prove their reading comprehension, or they can craft visual narratives to map out the pacing and setting of their own creative writing. Visual representation authentically enhances their communication skills across both of these disciplines.
Let's wrap things up with Part 4, Your Future Classroom.
Okay, so we've covered the theory, we've broken down the academic language, and we've walked through some fantastic classroom examples. So the crucial point is synthesizing all this into 4 key takeaways for the Texas 905 exam. First, always remember that art actively supports learning in other content areas. It is never just an afterthought. Second, cross-curricular activities absolutely require meaningful academic connections. Don't just integrate for the sake of checking a box, make it purposeful. Third, recognize that visual arts inherently strengthen high-level skills like observation, communication, and critical thinking. And lastly, true integration must enhance learning in both subjects, always maintaining the integrity of both the art and the core content. As we bring this explainer to a close, I want to leave you with one final thought to ponder as you prepare for your career. What will art look like when you are teaching your own students? Will it be confined to a random coloring sheet, or will it be a dynamic, essential tool that unlocks science, math, history, and literature for them? You now have the knowledge and the strategy to make learning deeply meaningful and highly visual. Trust in these strategies, embrace your own creativity, and you are going to be an absolutely incredible educator. Keep studying, keep visualizing that future classroom of yours, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.